Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for something a little different. Today we're going to discuss a subject that I've never discussed on this channel. I'm a little nervous about it because I've watched this particular documentary several times over the years and I always end up crying. So hopefully I can get through this without too much of that. But years ago, I saw this documentary called The Price of Honor, and it begins like this. My dad shot me. I'm dying. You hear the dispatcher asking the young lady, ma'am, what's your address? As he then puts her on hold and connects the call to the Irving Fire Department. You hear her say, oh my God, stop it, stop it. The few details she can provide are muffled, and while they're muffled, you hear sobs and pain. And again, I'm dying. In the 1 minute of that call, the voice of the caller does all of that and then fades in and out as the dispatcher is reaching the Irving, Texas Fire Department and rescue personnel, desperately trying to figure out where this call is coming from. Then the line goes dead. This call would be the last time that anyone ever heard from Sarah Saeed, who was 17, or her sister Amina Saeed, who was 18. Amina and her sister Sarah were typical teenagers in so many ways. They were both described by friends as intelligent and beautiful and somewhat outgoing and driven. They loved music, they loved texting on the phone, computers, animals, sports, hanging out with friends, and having a job. Sarah was known most for her smile, whereas Amina was known most for her tough, outspoken nature, which would later place her in harm's way because of her father. Yaser Saeed, or as they say, Yaser, I may pronounce that wrong here and there, forgive me, is an Egyptian immigrant whose opinion of Americans often caused issues within the home and often caused him to bump heads with his American-born daughters. Now, not his American-born son, but his American-born daughter. So in 1983, at 26, Yaser, who is the oldest of 5 adults, as well as his 5 siblings, moved to the suburbs of Texas. They opened up a convenience store. A girl that lived near the apartments or in the apartments that was next to the convenience store started dating one of his brothers. His brother's name was Yasin. So Yasin began seeing this girl whose name was Patricia. The couple dated for a while. They eventually broke up. And then shortly after, the older brother, Yaser, I always want to keep calling him Yaser, but I think it's Yaser. Yaser and the teenager became a couple. Now, what I forgot to tell you is that this young lady, Patricia, was 14 years old at the time. So they're dating, and he asks her parents' permission to marry her. And despite the family having some reservations, her parents, who were struggling at the time to make ends meet, decided that she would probably have a better chance at life if she were to be a part of the Saeed family because, unlike them, they appeared to be financially stable. So they signed whatever forms that they had to so that they could get married, starting us down this tragic road. So they got married in 1987. At the time, Patricia was 15 years old and Yaser was 30. A year later, in 1988, she gave birth to her son by the name of Islam. Y'all, I keep making up names. In 1989, she got her first girl. She named her Amina. And then in 1990, she had Sarah. In order to support the family, he had to find employment as a cab driver and her in retail. Now, she thought that she was going to be financially stable, but to her, bewilderment, he didn't really have much to do with the finances in terms of the convenience store. He didn't hold much stake, so he didn't benefit from his family owning it. In 1998, we're flashing forward, Amina told her grandmother that she was being M-word, by her father. So as a result, they rushed the girls to the hospital so that an exam could be done. They did the exam, but they could not find anything, possibly due to the amount of time that had passed, because you're not going to find certain fluids and things of that nature, depending on what was done. Like, there can be forms of M that do not involve penetration. There's fondling and things of that nature. So they couldn't find anything that showed that. The girls were also questioned. Keep in mind, at this point, Amina was probably 8 or 9, and I think Sarah was probably like 7 or 8. So she gets interviewed by the authority, tells them that her father had put his, quote, front parts in hers, and said that he did things to Sarah as well, who was at the time, like I said, 7 or 8. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the official report says sexual abuse could not be ruled out. So while talking with Child Protective Services, Sarah said that she wasn't just afraid of what her father would do, but she was also afraid of what her uncles would do as well. That's 2 children both saying that they're afraid of these people. At some point, Patricia and her daughters decide to stay with Patricia's mother, their grandmother, while the investigation is going on. They end up bringing in the husband for questioning, and he denies all of the allegations, saying that he never did anything to his daughters. He wouldn't do anything like that. But according to the documentation shown in the documentary, the authorities had doubts. They released him pending an investigation. And I'll try to make sure that I leave the link, or at least the title, to the documentary up here. I know there's only so much they can do when it comes to stuff like this, but it bothers me the way that the ball is often dropped in these type of cases. So over the course of the next several weeks, Yaser has called the mother-in-law's house all throughout the night and day. According to Patricia's sister, he would drive by, his siblings would drive by, he would call at 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning, like 30 minutes apart each time, because he wanted to speak to his wife and daughters. He knew that if he spoke to them, that he could possibly get them to come back. So as he kept calling and making his various threats, it got to the point where it was too much, and he got arrested on charges of retaliation for attempting to intimidate witnesses and an ongoing criminal investigation. That alone should have kept him in for some jail time. Now, Patricia will say in the documentary that he got arrested for tickets, but I don't know. Because a lot of what Patricia says throughout the documentary is going to piss you guys off, because you're going to see time and time again how she dropped the ball when it came to her kids. So he's arrested. But his stupid wife, Patricia, and yes, I called her stupid because she's part of the reason why her kids aren't currently here on this earth, realizes that her husband could possibly be locked up for a long time. And it just so happens that the young ladies later on decide that they're going to recant their story and say that they made it up. It is later revealed by Amina to her aunt and her grandmother and some others that her mother forced them at the time to take back the accusations. And as a result, their grandmother never forgave Patricia for choosing the man over her daughters and not believing them, because unlike Patricia, the family believed the girls. And I don't blame them. I feel like I kind of feel like the family dropped the ball too, because if you all knew all this was going on, why didn't you all try to get the kids from them? Especially because at some point the girls are begging to live with their grandmother or their aunt. But we'll continue. So there's a video that was made in the early 2000s, and it's kind of creepy. The footage shows that their dad filmed them that while they were laying down in their bed. Now they shared, I think it was a queen bed. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you have a girl laying in her bed, what does it look like if she's under the covers when you come in the room with a camcorder in hand and you're trying to pull the covers off of the young ladies? So the girls are seen, mainly Amina, pulling up the cover to her neck, and he is, trying to record, and she's like, leave us alone, leave us alone. Their brother then comes in the room, Islam, and he yanks the blankets off of them. As he pulls the comforter off, you see her legs, and her father zooms in and he's like, very nice, very nice. He then hovers over his daughter, Sarah, with the camcorder, also telling her that she has nice legs. This too may seem innocent, but there are certain things when you have been through stuff, or when you're a survivor, or when you've been taught, that you realize are signs that something just isn't right. And I can't ever picture my dad looking at me while I'm laying in my bed with the camcorder talking about some very nice legs. At the time, I think it was like 13. At some point, Amina writes a letter to her aunt and her grandmother, begging them to let them stay with them because she doesn't want to be with her father or her mother anymore. So let's fast forward to the time that Amina was forced to go to Egypt. So Amina just turned 16 and her father decides to take her to Egypt. He doesn't tell her ahead of time. He just up and takes her. What Amina doesn't know at the time was that he was planning on that trip to have her married off to a 49-year-old man. Fortunately for her, the deal fell through because the man didn't agree to pay the amount of money that Yaser was asking for. Amina was relieved, but she realized that it was only a matter of time until her father would try to do this again. So Amina starts sending emails to her friends and family, and her special friend, talking about how she was almost married. Her mother denies this ever happened, but members of her extended family say that she had told them years earlier that the father had planned to marry the girls off to Muslim men of his choosing as soon as they became of age. So she's obviously lying about this too, just like everything else. Both girls had jobs working as cashiers at a local grocery store. You would think that this would give them freedom because they would be away from their father and their mother for a while to work, but it really didn't give them as much freedom as they may have liked, because what the father would do is he would routinely sit outside in his car at their place of employment while monitoring the store. He would even sometimes go into the store watching them as they interacted with customers. There's even a video where he sees his daughter talking to a customer, and you hear him say she's going to get in trouble for that. He was a creep. When Amina was 17, she meets a boy by the name of Joseph in her Taekwondo class. In the documentary, he tells a portion of their story. He says, I met Amina through martial arts. I was doing Taekwondo at the time. The instructor had me doing some type of exercise, and she walked in and I messed it up or whatever. And I was like, who is that girl? I was almost immediately attracted to her, but the first thing I thought was, a girl that beautiful has to have a boyfriend, but he was wrong. So Joseph and Amina instantly hit it off. She ends up seeing where he puts his phone in the cubbyhole, and one day pulls out the phone, puts her number in it, and lets him know that she did this. She was strictly forbidden to date, but she was not about to allow the opportunity to get to know him more pass her. So they knew early on that they had to make sure that they kept things secretive and that their father didn't know. She emphasized this to him time and time again, to the point where he knew, like, if anything, deny. So they felt like they were meant to be together. Even his mother had said that she loved Amina, and Amina would correspond with her sometimes, and she too felt like they were meant to be together. As I said earlier, Amina was strong-willed and outgoing. Sarah was somewhat shy and reserved, but she had a goofy side, and she was also beautiful. And Sarah eventually had a boyfriend too, and his name was Eric. She also feared what her father would do if he found out that she was dating, because they're just not allowed to do this. You would think at 16 and 17, like, we're told that, you know, we may not be able to date. I think my age was 18. I was allowed to have a boyfriend at 16, but it was group dates and group dates only. And even then, my mom would be like, that's not your boyfriend. That's your special friend. I mean, that's whatever. So Yaser monitors their phones and their computers, making it hard for them to communicate with anyone without him knowing. Amina would use outside devices to send emails to Joseph, his mother, her teachers, the martial arts instructor who also speaks in the film, whenever she could. These messages would talk about, the way that she was feeling, and a lot of it happened to be in the last days of her life, which showed a terrifying picture of the state that she was in, the abuse that she endured, and how she and her sister went through a lot at the hands of their father. One of Amina's emails revealed that things had gotten worse after her father found a letter that she had written to Joseph, but it said Jojo on it. He demanded that she give him the boy's name and address. Knowing better than to admit anything, she told him that Jojo was merely a figment of her imagination because she knew she wasn't allowed to date. So in a world that she could date, this is what she would say to that person. Crazy at 17, you can't like a boy, right? That this would be such a huge issue. He didn't buy it at first, but she told him that it was just something made up because of how badly, she wished she could experience it. Even though she stuck to this story because of what he read, he really wasn't sure if he could believe her, and he really hadn't let it go because he brings it up later on. So with her sights set on her future with Joseph, Amina and Joseph start to plan, ways that they can get away. The mother offered to help them in any way that she could, so they started saving their money with hopes that they would eventually be able to get married in Vegas. Joseph said that he knew this would be dangerous for the both of them, and she did too, but they were willing to make this move because how much they loved each other, and she knew she needed to get away from her father. All of this is going on, and he still does not believe his daughter. So one day he kind of corners her in the room, and he demands that she gives him the name of the boy that she was seeing. Now, it's alleged that he did this with some form of weapon. I don't know how true that is. She refused, and he allegedly kicked her in the face, causing her braces to cut through her lips. To document the abuse, she had written the details down in an email and forwarded to her friends. Now, if I recall, once again in the documentary, her mother denies that this ever happened, even going as far as saying that Amina didn't have braces, and saying that the kids were never abused by him. She was the only one who was abused by him. But let me tell you something. If he will abuse you, then eventually at some point, if they try to intervene or something of that nature, he will possibly abuse your children too. It's August. No, it's not August. I put again in 2007. How did I get August? Okay, so in 2007, again, Yaser decides to go to Egypt with the family. While they're away, Amina decides to contact someone from the girls' high school and tell them in an email that she's afraid that she's going to be married off, as well as eventually being killed. Within days of her return to Texas, her father again wants to know the name of the boy that she is seeing, or she's going to have to face the consequences. She remains quiet. And he eventually goes to Patricia, gives her money, and says that this money is for your child's last meal. If someone told me that about my child, I would be running so quickly to the nearest law enforcement family house, get me some type of form of protection, something to ensure that I can make sure that my child is safe, or my children in this case are safe, because the boy can do whatever he wants to. His issue is only with the girls. He doesn't care about the boys seeing American Girls and all that other stuff. He cares about what the girls are doing, which is a lot of times what happens in some of these cultures. So on Christmas Day, year still 2007, Patricia decides to take the girls, and she runs. And they first go to Kansas, and then they end up in Oklahoma, which sounds smart, like she's finally saving her kids. So what he does is he decides to file a missing persons report with the help of their son. Patricia then contacts the authorities and tells them that she left, she's not missing, to escape her husband, who is dangerous. Patricia and her daughters, Sarah's boyfriend Eric, and Amina's friend Edgar hide out at various relatives' house for the next couple of days. Patricia then claims to her mother that she will not go back. Not her mother, her aunt. And her aunt reminds her that she has made that claim before. She assures her that this is an entirely different situation. I'm not going to go back this time because if I do, he's going to kill the girls, which means she understood the severity of the situation, but yet she still continues to put them in harm's way. Let me tell you how. So they put a deposit on a rental in Tulsa. But Patricia tells them at some point that she needs to return to Texas, not to see their father, but to take care of some family business. Allegedly, she told her daughters that the 31st was the anniversary of her mother's death, and she wanted to drive to East Texas to put some flowers on her grave. If you really wanted to do this, send someone else to do it, or do it alone. Why did your daughters have to come with you? They were of age where they could have stayed wherever by themselves momentarily. What was so important that she needed to go back? I don't feel like she's telling us the whole story. So Amina begs her not to go and tells her she's not coming back with her. She even complains about this to Joseph, about how, badly she didn't, want to come back, and how she's tired of her mom and she's not going to see her father because she just knows he's going to do something to her. Her mom assures her that they'll be heading straight back once she's finished. As they travel down the highway, however, Patricia tells them that they are going to go back to see the father. Why would this witch put her children in jeopardy like this? If you know what he's capable of, if you've been abused time and time again by him, you would think that you wouldn't do this. But apparently she's not smart. So Sarah agrees to see her father while Amina refuses, asking instead if she could stay at Edgar, her friend's place. So Patricia agrees that that's fine. After arriving in the suburb of Louisville, Patricia tells Amina that she'll see her later, and she's taking Sarah to go see the father, which is dumb. She's so dumb. Over the next few hours, Patricia is hounding Amina, texting her multiple times, begging her to come and talk with her father, but Amina doesn't want to. This man has threatened to kill her time and time again, but you want her to go and talk to him. He's tried to sell her off while she's overseas. He's tried to marry her off. He wants her to adhere to his rules and to not do the things that she's doing, but you want her to go and talk to him. Amina initially says no, but her mother keeps bothering her and she ends up giving in despite her better judgment. In Patricia's version, Amina was the one who had asked if she can come and take her home. Nothing about that sounds like it makes sense to me, especially if you take into account the things that she had told other people and the things that she was afraid of. And I don't think that she was making up those things. While this doesn't ring true, especially given her daughter's emails detailing how she feared that her father and uncles were plotting to kill her and her sister. So how could this be the case? Why would she tell you, yes, please come and get me and take me to my dad, after she was so adamant about not going over there? So at 7 p.m. on New Year's Day, 2008, Yaser offers to take Amina and Sarah out to dinner. Patricia asks if she can come along. He tells her no, he wants to be alone with his daughters so that they can iron out their differences. I don't understand why she couldn't be there. And given the nature of the situation, in my opinion, she should have went. He wouldn't have been able to be alone with my kids, especially with all the allegations and the things that have been put out about him. The girls get into their father's taxi, not knowing that this was going to be the beginning of the end for them. He pulls the taxi into a hotel. He then pulls out a 9mm semi-automatic pistol and fires aim. He first fires at Amina, and he then turns his gun on Sarah. After shooting several times, he leaves. Barely clinging to life, the person who made that phone call was Sarah. So she calls 911, and as soon as they get connected, she screams that her dad shot her, and she says, "I'm dying." Now, this would have been a great time for the operator to gather more information, but for whatever reason, he didn't ask the questions that I thought he should ask. He tried to get the address, but she wouldn't know the address. I don't even know if she would know the hotel. So maybe looking at it, there was only so much that he could do that it wouldn't have really made that much of a difference. But we don't know how long it was until she expired. Okay, I'm just pointing this out. So officials spend the next hour trying to track the cell phone signal to the area where that call came from, right? At 8:30 p.m., New Year's Day, an employee at the Omni Mandalay Hotel ends up calling into 911 to report a taxi in the hotel's cab queue with no driver and a body slumped in the passenger seat as well as one in the back seat. Can you imagine how it would have felt for the person who saw that scene? So the caller calls and remains very composed during the 3.5-minute call and explains very carefully in detail what's going on until the police and the first responders arrive on the scene. He said one of the people is in the passenger seat. It looks like she's hunched over and she has blood coming from her ear. I'm not sure what state she's in and don't want to necessarily touch the car. The dispatcher keeps him on the line and he describes an orange taxi, provides a license plate number, and tells the woman that he did not hear any gunshots. At the scene, police find the sisters dead and abandoned in the taxi, and it's quickly traced to their father, Yaser Saeed, a 50-year-old Egyptian-born cab driver. Both of the girls have been shot multiple times. First responders pronounced both victims dead. An autopsy later determines that Amina had been shot twice at point-blank range, while Sarah was shot 9 times. Both of them are tragic, right? But the thing that gets me most is that if you hear the 911 call, you can hear the desperation in her voice, number one. Number two, she witnessed her sister get murdered, right? Because her sister passed, they say instantly. Whereas she was shot 9 times and she had to suffer as she passed. And the thought of that alone is like, ooh, it's a lot. An arrest warrant was issued for Yaser Saeed on January 21st, but he was nowhere to be found. He remained a fugitive for the next 12 years, despite the fact that he was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list and there was a $100,000 reward for information relating to his arrest. Insane, I know. Joseph, when he was told by his mother what happened, was inconsolable, to the point where he eventually had to get checked into a psychiatric hospital in order to receive treatment. Just goes to show you how devastated he was by it. When he showed up at the memorial service to see Amina, the person that he loved, the person that he wanted to marry for the last time, Islam, who was her brother, threw a fit, had them throw out, shouting at him that he was the reason that the sisters were dead. He blamed him like he was the one who pulled the trigger, when all along Islam knew that it was his father. Despite the family's wishes, Patricia then decided to put her girls into a Muslim cemetery that was trash. And I'm not saying that it was trash because of the religious affiliation. I'm saying that it was trash because of the way it looked. If you watch the documentary, it kind of looks like a place where you would dump trash. The fact that she had found this to be a fitting place for her daughters to spend eternity attached to the man that unalived them makes me wonder how much she really did ever care for them. Patricia's sister and aunt were convinced from the very beginning that Yaser had not acted alone. They think that someone had been waiting nearby the night of the shooting, prepared to take him away from the scene, which I think so too. We later find out that in one way or another, he did receive help. In an effort to aid in the investigation, they put out flyers, the family did, of his likeness throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Patricia found out, and being the great mother that she is, asked them to stop. Which is why anything that comes out of her mouth, I don't care about it. Authorities were busy looking into his phone records. The phone records revealed a lot of calls between him and his brother Yasin before and after the murders. Patricia's phone activity also showed that she also had been in contact with Yasin after the murders, even though she claimed to police that she had not spoken to her husband or to his brother since he had left the house with the girls. Cell phone records indicate that she had been in contact with him at least on one occasion while he was on the run. You see what I'm saying? Your cell phone told on you, girl. So why you sitting here trying to act like you didn't? You did. When she was asked to take a polygraph test to clear up, the many discrepancies, she told them that she wasn't going to do it. In her words, she said it would have been a waste of time. In sit-down interviews, she tried to make us feel sorry for her. In one instance, you saw a photograph of her with Yaser holding a knife to her throat. She was crying and said that he was demonstrating in that picture what would happen if she ever left. In a later interview, she would claim that that picture was just a joke and they were putting on for the camera. So she kept switching it up, trying to protect him. I can't trust people like that. I just can't. I don't trust that witch. Amina and Sarah's brother, Islam, with whom they were really close with, apparently was supposedly devastated by the murders. Early on in his search, he was blaming Joseph and Eric for the tragedy. As time passed, he added his mother to the list of who was at fault. But obviously, the person who was mainly at fault was the one who pulled the trigger. And you all too, because y'all allowed for this man to think that it was okay to do what he did. At one point, he told the reporters that his father should turn himself in, only later to say that his sister had brought their deaths on themselves with their horrible behavior. Since when does falling in love and liking a boy become horrible? Authorities suspected all along that his family knew where he was hiding, as did their family, but, not their family, the girl's family, but they were powerless to prove anything. So on August 14, 2017, a handyman in the apartment complex of Bedford, Texas, called police saying that he had seen someone matching the fugitive's description in one of the units. So they looked in the unit and they found out that the tenant was Islam Saeed, the son. So they were like, okay, great. This is our first lead in a long time. After all, this killing happened in 2008. Here we are, 2017. At 6:30 that evening, they came back. They knocked on the door. He came to the door. He denied that the man that they questioned was his father. He was adamant that it was just a case of mistaken identity, but he seemed nervous, which made the investigators feel like he was hiding something or someone. They then returned at 1 a.m. with a search warrant, but as they entered the home, no one was there. The sliding door was open. The bushes on the outside were crushed, which means whoever was inside escaped. Y'all should have had someone outside if that was a possibility. 3 years later, another witness reported seeing Yasin and Islam visiting a house in Justin, Texas. There was another guy in there who never came outside the residence, but you could see him through the front window. So acting on the tip, the police started to surveil the house. They watched the same individuals for several days, go back and forth, past a week. They then got a search warrant for the property, and on August 20th, 2020, they entered the home. They placed Yaser Saeed under arrest for his daughter's murder. So 12 years later, they got him. Within a matter of hours, Yasin and Islam were also in custody for conspiracy and harboring a fugitive. On August 2nd, 2022, prosecutors called a whole bunch of witnesses to the stand to support this position that both Amina and Sarah had fallen victim to the horrible practice known as honor killing. Honor killings generally occur when females are accused of violating traditional gender norms and they're slain by male relatives for destroying the family name, for embarrassing, you got to get back your honor. In the case of the Said sisters, their unforgivable offense had been because they dated outside of the father's belief system, a transgression that he deemed, because it doesn't say it in their book, in their doctrine. This is a transgression that he deemed punishable by death. It's insane and mind-blowing. Amina, who made no secret of what she was going through and had mentioned a lot of things in her emails and talked about the things that her father was doing and how she was suspicious that he was conspiring to have her and her sister destroyed, eventually spoke from the grave because all of her communications were later entered into evidence during the trial. At the trial, her mother finally ended up speaking up against her husband. By that time, he was her ex-husband, but in my opinion, it was too late. She detailed the abuse that both she and her daughters had suffered over the years, no longer praising him as a good dad who had never abused the girls. She now referred to him as the devil, but I don't feel like she's too far from the devil, and I don't feel like her hands are clean either. After all, she's the one who begged the girls to come and talk to their father. She's the one who ran off and then brought them back under the guise that she was coming to visit her mother's grave. She's the reason why Amina met with her dad. So your hands aren't clean either. His defense team tried to act as if he was innocent, acting like he was a devout Muslim, but he didn't practice unless it was convenient. Only thing that mattered as far as the Muslim part is his daughters marrying, and I think that might have been more so that he wanted them to marry an Egyptian, for all we know. When prosecutors played Sarah's 911 call for the jury, her dying words ensured his conviction. Instead of admitting what we already knew, the defense lawyer said that Sarah was delusional and trauma-induced confusion. As a result, she misidentified her dad as the shooter, even though he clearly was the shooter. It was his cab and all those other things. Like, come on. At the conclusion of the trial, the jury deliberated for 3 hours, and they found him guilty on 2 counts of capital murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He's in Texas. Y'all know what y'all should have did. On January 19th, 2021, the brother pled guilty for harboring a fugitive and conspiracy to obstruct justice, and he got 10 years. Followed by his brother on February 2021. Same thing, but he got 12 years. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, because I just found out today when I was looking into it that they finally found him, because the last time I watched this, they didn't know where he was. I think the unfortunate thing about all of this is that this type of thing, these honor killings, which is something that I don't normally discuss on this channel, they happen far too often. And it should not be okay, especially over here where we supposedly have all these things in place that are supposed to protect individuals. Child Protective Services was made aware of this man very early on, and despite their findings, I feel like additional investigations should have been done. Could the girls not have been removed? Did no other family want to take them? Could they not be separated from their mother for a while? I feel like there were so many different things that could have been done. And now, unfortunately, these 2 beautiful young ladies who all they wanted to do was to experience life and to love and to be free to love whomever they wanted to love are now no longer here. I feel like the father is a coward. I feel like the family is a coward, because if this was indeed for their honor, why not go turn yourself in afterwards if you felt like you did nothing wrong? Instead, what he did was he hid out like a little rat for 12 years. And then when they finally did capture him, then he tried to act like he didn't do it. Why not be the man and own up to what you did? I feel like their mother deserves to suffer. And some of you may disagree with me, but as a mom, I can't imagine putting my children through the things that that mom put her children through, allowing their father to do the things that he did. One minute you see it, one minute you don't. You didn't protect them as you should have as being their mom. And I just got a problem with that. But that's all. Y'all let me know what you thought. Until next time.